"Police! Search warrant! Open the door now or we're breaking it down." "What? Wait, I'm coming." Too late. We're coming in. The crash came at 4:03 a.m. Ella didn't hear it at first, after grading 87 essays on To Kill a Mockingbird. Until midnight, she could sleep through anything. Fire alarms, garbage trucks, even the couple upstairs with their weekly arguments. But the sound of her apartment door splintering off its hinges cut through exhaustion like a blade through silk. She opened her eyes to blinding white light and the metallic click of handcuffs being readied. 3 men in dark police uniforms, badges glinting, duty belts loaded with weapons. Their faces were cold, their voices colder. They moved with the kind of practiced aggression that told her this wasn't their first time. Ella clutched her grey blanket to her chest, her natural curls wild from sleep, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wanted to scream, she wanted to ask what was happening. But the lead officer's expression, sharp, predatory, satisfied, told her everything she needed to know. These men weren't here to protect her. They were here to destroy her. And screaming wouldn't save her. Not when the predators wore badges, not when the system was the weapon. But the officers had made 4 fatal mistakes. They didn't know about apartment 6A. They didn't know the quiet Korean man who always nodded politely in the hallway had been watching the building's security feeds for months. They didn't know Yoo Jin-woo wasn't just a neighbor, and they definitely didn't know that the moment they broke down Ella's door, they signed their own death warrants. Because in the shadows of the doorway, framed by a sliver of hallway light, stood a man in a black overcoat and turtleneck. His posture was perfectly still. His expression was deadly soft, and in his hand was a tablet showing a live feed of everything they'd just done, uploading in real time to a server they would never find. The officers thought they were in control. They were wrong. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. The first sound Ella registered was wood splintering. Not cracking, splintering. The kind of violence that turns a solid door into kindling. Her eyes snapped open to darkness, her body frozen in that terrible space between sleep and panic, where the brain hasn't caught up to the danger, but the heart already knows. Then came the voices. "Clear the entry. Move, move, move. Bedroom's back here. Got her." The flashlight beam hit her face like a physical blow. Ella threw up her hand, squinting against the white-hot glare, her other hand clutching the grey blanket to her chest. 3 silhouettes filled her doorway, broad-shouldered and armed, their badges catching the light. "Ella Morrison?" The lead officer's voice was sharp, clipped, professional, like he'd done this 100 times before. Yes, what's happening? Why are you—" "We have a warrant to search these premises. Stay on the bed, hands where we can see them." Ella's hands trembled as she raised them, the blanket slipping down to her lap. She was wearing an old grey sweatshirt, her natural curls wild from sleep, her mind racing through every terrible possibility. A warrant? For what? She was a teacher, she paid her taxes, she'd never even gotten a parking ticket. "There must be some mistake," she said, her voice cracking. "I haven't done anything wrong." The lead officer, tall, white, with a jaw that looked carved from stone, didn't even glance at her. He nodded to the other 2. "Search it. Every drawer, every closet. You know what we're looking for." The officers fanned out with practiced efficiency. One headed for her closet, the other for her dresser. The lead officer stayed in the doorway, his hand resting casually on his belt, his eyes cold and satisfied. Ella's heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't right. None of this was right. Real police didn't break down doors at 4 in the morning without warning. Real police didn't look at you like you were already guilty. "Can I see the warrant?" she asked, her voice steadier now. She'd spent years teaching teenagers how to question authority, how to know their rights. She wasn't going to forget those lessons now. The lead officer smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "You'll see it when we're done here." One of the other officers, shorter, stocky, with a nervous energy that made Ella's skin crawl, opened her dresser drawer. He rifled through her clothes with rough, careless hands, tossing her things onto the floor. The third officer was in her closet, shoving aside hangers, checking pockets. "Nothing here," the closet officer called out. "Keep looking," the lead officer said. Ella watched them tear through her life, her safe space, the tiny apartment she'd worked 2 jobs to afford. Anger began to cut through the fear. These men weren't just searching, they were performing, like they were following a script. And then she saw it. The stocky officer pulled something from his jacket pocket, a small plastic bag, clear, filled with white powder. He glanced at the lead officer, who gave him a barely perceptible nod. Ella's blood turned to ice. "No," she breathed. "No, don't you dare." "Well, well," the stocky officer said loudly, his voice dripping with fake surprise. "What do we have here?" He held up the bag, turning it toward the lead officer like he'd just found buried treasure. The lead officer's smile widened. "Found in the suspect's bedroom dresser. Looks like about 2 ounces of cocaine. That's intent to distribute." "That's not mine." Ella's voice rose, panic flooding back. "You just pulled that from your pocket. I saw you." "Ma'am, you need to calm down," the lead officer said, his tone patronizing. "This will go easier if you cooperate." "I am cooperating! You're planting evidence! This is illegal!" The stocky officer moved toward her, reaching for his handcuffs. "Ella Morrison, you're under arrest for possession with intent to—" "Get away from me!" But what the officers didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that every word they spoke, every movement they made, was being captured in crystal clear high definition. In apartment 6A, Yu Jin-woo sat in front of a bank of monitors, his expression utterly calm as he watched the scene unfold. He'd been expecting this, not tonight, specifically, but soon. He'd seen the patrol cars circling the block, heard the whispers in his network about a teacher who'd made herself a target. He'd upgraded his security system 3 months ago, added cameras with facial recognition, audio enhancement, cloud backup to servers in 3 different countries. Jin-woo's fingers moved across his keyboard with practiced precision. He isolated the audio feed, enhanced it, created a separate file showing the stocky officer pulling the drugs from his own pocket. He time-stamped everything, cross-referenced it with the officer's personnel files he'd acquired weeks ago, and began the upload sequence. By the time the officers realized they were being watched, it would be too late. On the monitor, he watched Ella lunge for something on her nightstand. Jin-woo leaned forward slightly, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. "Fight back," he thought. "Show them you're not the easy victim they think you are." Ella's hand closed around the thick teacher's manual on her nightstand, a beast of a book with a hardcover that weighed at least 3 pounds. She swung it with everything she had, connecting with the stocky officer's reaching hand with a satisfying crack. "Son of a—" He stumbled back, cradling his wrist. "You want to add assaulting an officer to your charges?" The lead officer snarled, moving toward her now. Ella scrambled backward on the bed, the book raised, like a weapon. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "You're not real cops. Real cops don't plant evidence. Real cops don't break down doors without—" "Hold her," the lead officer ordered. The 2 other officers moved in from either side. Ella swung the book again, catching the closet officer across the shoulder, but there were too many of them and they were too strong. Hands grabbed her arms, her shoulders, forcing her down onto the mattress. She kicked, twisted, fought with every ounce of strength she had, but it was like fighting against concrete. "Stop resisting!" the stocky officer shouted, loud enough for imaginary witnesses to hear. "I'm not resisting, you're attacking me!" Ella screamed back. The lead officer loomed over her, the plastic bag of drugs in his hand. He was going to plant it on her, make it look like she had it in her pocket or hidden in her clothes. They were going to arrest her, process her, and by the time anyone listened to her story, these men would have filed their reports and she'd be just another criminal who claimed she was innocent. Just another black woman the system swallowed whole. The lead officer leaned down, his smile cold and victorious. "Should have kept your mouth shut at that school board meeting, Ms. Morrison. Some people don't like teachers who ask too many questions." The words hit her like a slap. The school board meeting, 3 weeks ago, when she'd stood up and demanded to know why the district was funneling money to a private security company with ties to local law enforcement. When she'd asked why students were being arrested for minor infractions instead of getting counseling. This was retaliation. This was punishment. And no one was coming to save her. But then the temperature in the room changed. It was subtle at first, a shift in the air, a sudden stillness that made even the officers pause. The lead officer's head turned slightly, his expression shifting from triumph to confusion. Someone was standing in the doorway. The figure was backlit by the hallway light, tall and perfectly still, wearing a black overcoat over a black turtleneck. His posture was relaxed, almost casual, but there was something about the way he stood, the absolute certainty in his silence, that made the room feel smaller. Yu Jin-woo, her neighbor from 6A, the quiet man who always nodded politely in the hallway, who never played loud music, who seemed to exist in a bubble of controlled minimalism. He stepped into the room with the kind of grace that made violence look like art. "Gentlemen," he said, softly, his accent barely noticeable, "I believe you've made a mistake." The lead officer released Ella's arm and straightened, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. "This is official police business. You need to leave. Now." Jin-woo didn't move. His eyes, dark, calculating, utterly calm, swept over the scene. The broken door, the scattered clothes, Ella pinned to the bed, the plastic bag of drugs in the lead officer's hand. "Official," Jin-woo repeated, his tone almost thoughtful. "With a warrant, I assume?" "That's none of your business." "I own this building," Jin-woo said quietly. "That makes it very much my business." The officers exchanged glances. The stocky one still cradled his wrist. The closet officer shifted his weight, suddenly looking less confident. Jin-woo took another step forward. There was no threat in his movement, no aggression, but somehow the officers moved back, like their bodies recognized something their minds hadn't caught up to yet. "Let her go," Jin-woo said. It wasn't a request. The lead officer's jaw tightened. "I don't know who you think you are, but if you don't leave right now, I'll arrest you for obstruction." Jin-woo smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Ella had ever seen. Soft, almost gentle, and completely devoid of warmth. "You're not going to arrest anyone," Jin-woo said. The lead officer's hand moved to his weapon. "Don't take another step." But Jin-woo was already moving, not toward the officers, that would have been expected, predictable. Instead, he moved to Ella's dresser, picked up her phone with 2 fingers, and held it up. "Recording," he said simply. "Has been for the last 7 minutes, audio and video, already uploaded to the cloud." The lead officer's face went white. "You're lying." "Am I?" Jin-woo's smile widened slightly. "Shall we test that theory? I can call my attorney right now, have him access the feed. Or—" he paused. reaching into his coat pocket. "I can show you myself." Jinwoo pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen twice, and turned it toward the officers. The lead officer's face went from white to grey. On the screen was a split view, 4 camera angles showing the hallway outside Ella's apartment. Every moment of the break-in was there. The officers arriving without knocking, the door being kicked open, the search, though these planted drugs, all of it captured in crystal clear high definition, complete with audio. "That's—" the lead officer started. "Already uploaded," Jinwoo interrupted smoothly, "to 3 separate secure servers, one in Seoul, one in Toronto, one in Geneva. Even if you destroyed this tablet right now, even if you killed me right here in this room, the footage is already being reviewed by people who are very interested in police corruption." The stocky officer took a step toward the door. "We need to go! We need to go right now!" "Geek, shut up!" the lead officer hissed. But his confidence was cracking. Ella could see it in the way his hand trembled slightly, the way his eyes kept darting between Jinwoo's face and the tablet screen. Jinwoo tapped the screen again. The view changed to show the interior of Ella's bedroom, a different angle, hidden somewhere she'd never noticed. It showed the stocky officer pulling the drugs from his own jacket pocket. It showed the lead officer nodding approval. It showed everything. "The interesting thing about digital evidence," Jinwoo said conversationally, "is that it's very easy to verify timestamps, metadata, chain of custody. And I've been recording this building's security feeds for 8 months. Every hallway, every entrance, every conversation." He paused, letting that sink in. "Including the one you had in your patrol car 15 minutes ago, the one where you discussed exactly how you were going to frame Ms. Morrison, the one where you mentioned who paid you to do it." The lead officer's weapon was in his hand now, pointed at Jinwoo's chest. "Give me that tablet." Jinwoo didn't flinch. His expression remained perfectly calm, almost bored. "If my heart stops beating, the footage automatically gets sent to the FBI, the State Attorney General, and several major news organizations. It's called a dead man's switch, very popular in my line of work." "Your line of work?" the closet officer asked, his voice shaking. And here was where Jinwoo's mask slipped just slightly, where the businessman veneer fell away and revealed something far more dangerous underneath. His smile turned sharp, predatory. "I run several organizations," he said softly. "Import-export mostly. Some real estate. A few other ventures that operate outside legal boundaries. The kind of businesses that require excellent security systems and a thorough understanding of leverage." The lead officer's gun hand wavered. "You're a criminal." "I'm a businessman who understands that reputation is everything," Jinwoo corrected. "And right now your reputation is about to become very interesting. Corrupt officers planting evidence on an innocent teacher, using their badges to intimidate and terrorize, all because someone with money wanted her silenced." He took a step closer. The lead officer's gun should have been intimidating, but somehow Jinwoo made it look irrelevant. "Richard Castellano," Jinwoo said, his voice dropping even lower. "That's who paid you, the school board member with the private security contract, the one who's been running a protection racket through the police department for 5 years, the one who has 17 officers on his payroll." The lead officer's face confirmed everything. "How?" he started. "Because I make it my business to know who operates in my territory," Jinwoo said. His tone was conversational, almost pleasant, but his eyes were ice. "Castellano and I have had an understanding for years. He doesn't interfere with my operations. I don't interfere with his. But apparently—" his smile vanished. "He didn't think framing a teacher in my building counted as interference." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "So, here's what's going to happen," Jinwoo continued. You're going to leave this apartment, you're going to get in your car, you're going to drive directly to the nearest FBI field office, and you're going to confess to everything you've done. Not just tonight. Everything, every frame job, every planted piece of evidence, every person whose life you destroyed for money. And if we don't, the lead officer's voice cracked. Jinwoo's expression became something beyond dangerous, something that made Ella's blood run cold, even though he was ostensibly on her side. Then the footage goes public in 1 hour, he said quietly, along with your home addresses, your financial records, the names of everyone you've ever planted evidence on, your children's school schedules, your wives' work addresses, every detail of your lives. He paused. And then I'll make sure that every criminal organization in this city knows exactly who you are and what you've done. Corrupt cops don't last very long in general population, do they? And they last even less long on the outside when the wrong people know where to find them. He let that hang in the air for a moment. When the cartels I do business with learn you've been targeting innocent people for profit, when the street gangs discover you're the reason some of their members are locked up on false charges, when word gets out to every criminal in this city that you're dirty cops who can be bought. Jinwoo's smile was absolutely terrifying. You won't survive the week. None of you will, and neither will your families. You're threatening to kill us, the lead officer whispered. No, Jinwoo said. I'm promising to make you famous. What happens after that is simply cause and effect. The silence that followed was suffocating. The stocky officer dropped the plastic bag of drugs onto the floor. His hands were shaking. I'm out. This wasn't worth it. Nothing is worth this. He headed for the door. The closet officer followed without a word. The lead officer stood frozen, his gun still pointed at Jinwoo, his face twisted with rage and fear, and the terrible realization that he'd just lost everything. You won't get away with this, he said, hoarsely. Jinwoo's expression didn't change. I already have. The question is, will you? The lead officer lowered his weapon. Without another word, he turned and left, his footsteps heavy in the hallway. Ella didn't move. She couldn't. Her body was still locked in fight or flight mode, her heart racing, her hands shaking. She watched Jinwoo stand in the doorway until the sound of the officer's footsteps faded completely, until she heard the distant slam of the building's front door. Only then did he turn to look at her. Are you hurt? He asked quietly. Ella tried to speak. Nothing came out. She shook her head. Jinwoo moved closer, his movements careful, controlled. He picked up the plastic bag of drugs with 2 fingers, examining it like it was a particularly uninteresting insect. I'll dispose of this properly. You! Ella's voice cracked. She tried again. You've been watching me. I've been watching the building, Jinwoo corrected. You just happened to be the one who needed watching most. Why? Because I recognized the pattern, he said simply. 3 months ago, one of my associates mentioned that a school board member with ties to organized crime was upset about a teacher asking questions. 2 months ago, I noticed patrol cars circling this block more frequently than usual. 1 month ago, I upgraded my security system to cover every angle of this building. He met her eyes, his expression unreadable. I've been expecting them to come for you, Ms. Morrison. I just didn't know which night it would be. Ella's mind was reeling. You're a criminal? Yes. You just saved my life. Yes. Why? Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Because I've spent my entire life operating in the shadows, doing things that can never be undone, making choices that cost people their futures. And you, he paused, you're trying to make the world better. That's rare. worth protecting. Ella looked at him, really looked at him. The expensive clothes, the controlled posture, the eyes that held too many secrets. This man wasn't a savior. He was a predator who'd just chased off other predators, but he'd saved her. "What happens now?" she asked. Jinwoo slipped the tablet back into his coat pocket. "Now you stay in my apartment for a few days while I make sure those officers keep their word. You'll be safe there. Then we'll figure out the next step." "And if they don't confess?" His smile returned, deadly soft. "Then I'll handle it my way." Ella should have been terrified. She should have run, but she was a teacher who'd just been attacked by the very system she'd trusted her whole life. And the only person who'd come to save her was a man who lived outside all the rules she'd built her life around. But before she could respond, Jinwoo's expression shifted, hardened. "There's something else you need to know," he said quietly. "Those officers mentioned Richard. Castellano, he's not going to stop just because they failed. He has resources, connections, other people on his payroll." Ella's stomach dropped. "You're saying I'm still in danger?" "I'm saying that taking down 3 corrupt cops won't solve the larger problem," Jinwoo said. "Castellano is the head of a network that's been operating in this city for years. He has judges, lawyers, more officers. If we want you to truly be safe, we need to take down the entire operation." "We?" Ella repeated. Jinwoo's eyes met hers. "You have the moral authority. I have the resources and knowledge of how his world works. Together we can dismantle everything he's built, but it will be dangerous. It will require you to trust me completely. And it will mean crossing lines you probably never imagined crossing." Ella's hands tightened on the blanket. "What kind of lines?" "The kind where we use my criminal contacts to gather evidence the legal system can't access, where we leverage my reputation to pressure people into giving testimony, where we operate in the grey areas between legal and illegal until we have enough to bury Castellano in a way he can't escape." He stepped closer, his voice intense. "I can protect you from immediate threats, but if you want justice, real justice, you'll have to become my partner in this, not my victim, not the damsel I rescued, my equal partner in taking down a corrupt system." Ella stared at him. This was insane. He was asking her to become complicit in what? Vigilante justice? Criminal conspiracy? But then she remembered the lead officer's smile, the casual way he'd ordered evidence planted, the absolute confidence that he'd get away with it. The system had failed her. Maybe it was time to work outside the system. "Okay," she whispered. "I'm in." Jinwoo nodded once. "Then welcome to the shadows, Ms. Morrison. Let's burn it all down." Apartment 6A looked like it had been designed by someone who valued function over feeling. The walls were a pale grey, bare, except for a single piece of abstract art that somehow felt more like camouflage than decoration. The furniture was sleek, minimal, a black leather sofa, a glass coffee table, a dining table that looked like it had never hosted a meal. Everything was clean, sharp-edged, deliberate. Ella stood in the center of the living room, still wearing her grey sweatshirt and clutching the blanket she'd grabbed from her bed. Her apartment was a crime scene now, door broken, belongings scattered, the ghost of those men's presence still hanging in the air. She couldn't go back there. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Jinwoo moved through the space with the ease of someone who knew exactly where everything was, even in the dark. He didn't turn on the overhead lights, just a single lamp in the corner that cast long shadows across the floor. "You can take the bedroom," he said, gesturing down a short hallway. "I'll sleep out here." Ella didn't move. Her mind was still, trying to process everything that had happened in the last hour. The break-in, the planted drugs, Jinwoo appearing like some kind of avenging angel with a tablet full of evidence and a smile that promised violence. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Really?" Jinwoo paused, his back to her. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he turned, his expression carefully neutral. "I told you, I run several organizations." "You said they operate outside legal boundaries." "Yes." "What does that mean?" Jinwoo moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. "It means I facilitate transactions that other people can't or won't. Import and export of goods that don't go through traditional channels, protection services for businesses that need a certain kind of discretion, resolution of disputes that the legal system isn't equipped to handle." "You're talking about the mafia," Ella said flatly. "I prefer the term private enterprise," Jinwoo replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. "But yes, if you need a simple label, that works." Ella's hands tightened on the blanket. "And you've been watching me for 8 months?" "I've been watching the building for 8 months," he corrected. "You became relevant 3 months ago when I learned you were being targeted." "Targeted by who?" Jinwoo turned to face her fully. "A man named Richard Castellano. He sits on your school board. He also owns a private security company that contracts with the city's police department. More importantly, he runs the largest corruption network in this city. Protection rackets, evidence planting, witness intimidation. He has 17 officers on his payroll, 5 judges, 3 prosecutors, and unlimited resources to make problems disappear." He paused, his expression darkening. "You asked questions about his business practices at that school board meeting. You demanded transparency about where money was going. You threatened to file a formal complaint with the State Education Board. So Castellano decided you were a threat that needed to be eliminated." Ella's stomach dropped. "So he sent those cops to frame me?" "He paid them $5,000 each," Jinwoo said. "I have the transaction records, wire transfers from a shell company registered in Delaware to their personal accounts. All traceable, all illegal." "How do you know all this?" "Because I make it my business to know who operates in my territory," Jinwoo said simply. "Castellano and I have had an understanding for years. He doesn't interfere with my operations. I don't interfere with his. We maintain separate spheres of influence. It's been profitable for both of us." His expression hardened. "But framing an innocent woman in my building, that crosses the line, that violates our agreement. And more than that?" He paused. "It's wrong. I may be a criminal, but I have principles." Ella studied him, trying to reconcile the man in front of her with the neighbor she'd exchanged polite nods with in the hallway. "Why did you help me?" "Really?" Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it before. "Because I've spent 15 years building an empire on violence and fear and the kind of choices that keep you awake at night. I've hurt people who deserved it and people who didn't. I've made money from suffering and told myself it was just business." He paused. "And then I watched you stand up at that school board meeting and demand justice for students who don't have anyone else to fight for them. I watched you risk your career to ask questions no one else would ask. And I thought—" He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "I thought that maybe protecting something good was worth more than maintaining a business arrangement with a corrupt coward." But then his phone buzzed. Jinwoo pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his expression turned grim. "What is it?" Ella asked. "The stocky officer, the one who planted the drugs," Jinwoo said quietly. "He didn't go to the FBI. He went to Castellano instead." Ella's blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" Jinwoo's jaw tightened. "It means Castellano knows I interfered. It means he knows I have evidence. And it means—" He looked up at her, his eyes dark with something that might have been concern. It means he's going to escalate. He can't let this go. His entire operation is built on the perception that he's untouchable. If word gets out that someone successfully opposed him, his whole network falls apart. So what do? We move faster than he does, Jinwoo said. He pulled out his tablet, his fingers flying across the screen. I'm uploading the footage to the FBI's anonymous tip line right now. Full package, the frame job, the wire transfers, everything. Once they have it, Castellano can't simply make it disappear. Will that be enough? No, Jinwoo admitted. The FBI moves slowly. Bureaucracy, warrants, legal procedures. Castellano will use that time to destroy evidence, intimidate witnesses, and possibly eliminate anyone who can testify against him. His eyes met hers, including you. Ella felt her knees go weak. He'd kill me? In his position, I would, Jinwoo said bluntly. You're the victim at the center of the most damning evidence. If you disappeared, the case becomes much harder to prosecute, and Castellano has resources to make people disappear. Permanently. He moved closer, his voice intense. That's why you need to stay here. This apartment is secure. Reinforced door, bulletproof windows, multiple exit routes. No one gets in without me knowing. You'll be safe here while I work on taking Castellano down. Alone? Ella asked. You're going after him alone? I'm not alone, Jinwoo said. I have an organization, people who are loyal to me, resources Castellano doesn't know about, and most importantly, his smile turned sharp. I have something he doesn't. I have righteousness on my side. Ella would have laughed at the absurdity of a mafia boss talking about righteousness, but his expression was deadly serious. You've been protecting me for 8 months, she said, quietly. Even before you knew they were coming. Yes. Why? Because people like you are rare, Ms. Morrison, Jinwoo said. And people like me, we tend to destroy rare things. I wanted to make sure that didn't happen this time. Ella didn't know what to say to that. This man was a criminal. He'd admitted as much. He probably had blood on his hands, skeletons in closets, secrets that would make her nightmares look like children's stories. But he'd also saved her life. Thank you, she said finally. Jinwoo nodded once. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be... His phone rang. Not a buzz this time, a full, urgent ring that made him tense immediately. He answered it, listened for 10 seconds, and his expression turned to stone. When? He asked sharply. How many? He listened again, then ended the call. We need to move, he said. Now. What's happening? Castellano's men are downstairs, Jinwoo said, his voice clipped and professional. 4 of them, armed. They're checking apartments, looking for you. Ella's heart stopped. How did they? The stocky officer must have told them you're in the building, Jinwoo said. He moved to a closet, pulled out a black duffel bag, and started pulling items from hidden compartments. A gun, a knife, what looked like a small explosive device. They probably think you're still in your apartment, but they'll work their way through the building until they find you. Oh God, Ella breathed. This is really happening. They're really going to... Breathe, Jinwoo said firmly. He stepped in front of her, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes locked on hers. Listen to me. You are not going to die tonight. I won't let that happen. Do you understand? Ella nodded, even though she didn't understand anything. We're going to leave through the fire escape, Jinwoo continued. There's a car waiting 2 blocks away. My driver is armed and trained. He'll take you to a secondary location, a safe house outside the city. You'll stay there until I've neutralized the threat. What about you? Jinwoo's smile was terrifying. I'm going to have a conversation with Castellano's men about the consequences of threatening people under my protection. You're going to kill them, Ella whispered. If necessary, Jinwoo said without hesitation. But preferably I'll convince them to deliver a message to their boss that this building and everyone in it is off limits, that if he wants a war, I'm happy to give him one, and that he will lose. He released her shoulders and moved back to his preparations. But Jinwoo, Ella's voice cracked. What if they kill you? He paused, glancing back at her. For just a moment his mask slipped, and she saw something almost tender in his eyes. Then my organization will make sure you're protected anyway, he said quietly. I've already made arrangements. No matter what happens to me, you'll be safe. Before Ella could respond, there was a crash from somewhere below them. Shouting. The sound of a door being kicked in. They were getting closer. Time's up, Jinwoo said. Let's go. Ella woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of voices in the living room. For a disorienting moment she thought she was back in her own apartment, that the previous night had been a nightmare. Then she saw the grey walls, the unfamiliar ceiling, and reality crashed back. They'd escaped through the fire escape. Castellano's men had been too slow, too confident, too used to victims who didn't have a Korean Mafia boss watching their back. Jinwoo had gotten her to the car, then disappeared back into the building. She'd heard gunshots, then silence. Then a text from Jinwoo 3 hours later. Threat. Neutralized. Safe to return. She'd been too terrified to ask what neutralized meant. Now she padded down the hallway to find Jinwoo sitting at the dining table with a laptop open in front of him, talking quietly into a phone in what sounded like Korean. He looked exactly the same as he had before, not a hair out of place, no blood, no visible injuries, like he hadn't just confronted 4 armed men in the middle of the night. He glanced up as she entered, nodded once, and ended the call. Coffee's fresh, he said, gesturing to the kitchen counter. Ella poured herself a cup, grateful for something normal to hold on to. Are those men? Alive, Jinwoo said. Injured, but alive. They're currently explaining to their employer why they failed to complete their assignment. What did you do to them? I made it clear that continuing to pursue you would be a terminal career decision, Jinwoo said calmly. I may have broken a few bones to emphasize the point, but they'll recover. Ella didn't know whether to be relieved or horrified. Did they confess? She asked. The 2 officers who went to the FBI? 2 of them did, Jinwoo said. Turned themselves in at the FBI field office at 6 this morning. The 3rd officer, the lead one, tried to run. The FBI picked him up at the airport 2 hours ago. So it's over? Jinwoo's expression darkened. The immediate threat is contained, but Castellano is still out there, still dangerous. The FBI is moving forward with warrants, but that takes time. And in that time, there was a sharp knock at the door. 3 knocks, then 2, then 3 again. Some kind of pattern. Jinwoo stood, his posture changing instantly from relaxed to alert. He moved to the door, checked the peephole, and his shoulders tensed. Who is it? Ella asked. Your mother, Jinwoo said quietly. What? The knocking came again, louder this time. Ella Louise Morrison, I know you're in there. Open this door right now. Ella's blood ran cold. Mama Loretta. She must have tried calling, must have heard about the police at the building, must have driven straight here from her house across town. Ella rushed to the door and yanked it open. Her mother stood in the hallway, 5 foot 2 inches of righteous fury in a church dress and sensible shoes, her eyes blazing. Mama, don't you mama me, Loretta snapped. She pushed past Ella into the apartment, her gaze sweeping the space before landing on Jinwoo. Her eyes narrowed. And who are you? You, Jinwoo, he said, bowing slightly. I'm Ella's neighbor. Her neighbor? Loretta repeated, her tone dripping with skepticism. She looked him up and down, the expensive clothes, the too calm demeanor, the way he stood like he was ready for violence at any moment. My daughter calls me at 5 in the morning crying, tells me her apartment was broken into by police, and now I find her in some strange man's apartment wearing yesterday's clothes. You want to explain that to me? Mama, it's not what you think, Ella said quickly. Jinwoo helped me. Those cops were corrupt. They were trying to frame me. Frame you for what? Drug possession, Jinwoo said calmly. They planted narcotics in her bedroom. I intervened. Loretta's eyes went wide. Then they narrowed again, this time with calculation. You intervened. How? I had security footage of the entire incident, Jinwoo said. I showed it to the officers and convinced them to confess to their crimes. Convinced them, Loretta said slowly. She turned to Ella. Baby, what is this man not telling me? Ella hesitated. Her mother had raised her to be honest, to never lie, to always trust in the truth. But how could she explain that the man who'd saved her life was a criminal? That the only person who'd protected her from the system was someone who lived entirely outside it? He owns the building, Ella said carefully. He has security cameras. He saw what they were doing, and he stopped them. And you believe him? I watched the footage myself, Mama, Ella said. It's real. Those cops were going to destroy my life. Loretta was quiet for a long moment, her eyes moving between Ella and Jinwoo. Finally, she turned to Jinwoo. What do you want from my daughter? Mama. Hush, Loretta said, not taking her eyes off Jinwoo. I'm asking him. Jinwoo met Loretta's gaze without flinching. I want her to be safe. Why? Because she deserves to be, Jinwoo said simply. And because I'm tired of watching good people get destroyed by bad systems. That's a pretty answer, Loretta said. But I didn't ask for pretty. I asked for truth. Jinwoo was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. Because I've spent my entire adult life doing things I can't undo. Hurting people, breaking laws, building an empire on violence. And your daughter? He paused. She reminds me that there's still something in this world worth protecting, even if I don't deserve to be the one protecting it. Loretta studied him for a long moment. Then she moved closer, her eyes hard. My daughter is a good woman, she said quietly. She believes in justice. She believes in doing the right thing. She believes the system can be fixed. And if you do anything to corrupt that belief, to drag her into whatever dark world you live in, I will make it my personal mission to destroy you. I don't care who you are or what connections you have. Do you understand me? Yes, ma'am, Jinwoo said. Good. Loretta turned to Ella. Baby, go get dressed. We need to talk to the FBI. Mama. Now Ella. Ella recognized that tone. There was no arguing with it. She headed back to the bedroom, leaving Jinwoo alone with her mother. She didn't hear what they said to each other, but when she came back out 15 minutes later, dressed in clothes Jinwoo had somehow arranged to have delivered, her mother was sitting at the dining table with a cup of coffee, and Jinwoo was standing by the window with his hands in his pockets. The tension in the room could have been cut with a knife. We're going to the FBI field office, Loretta said. All three of us. You're going to tell them everything that happened. And then, she looked at Jinwoo. Then Mr. Yu is going to explain exactly what kind of security system he has in this building and why he felt it necessary to install it. Jinwoo's expression didn't change. Of course. And if I find out you've lied to my daughter, or that you've put her in any danger beyond what she's already facing, there won't be enough shadows in this city for you to hide in. Are we clear? Crystal, Jinwoo said. But as Loretta stood and picked up her purse, Jinwoo's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression turned to ice. "What is it?" Ella asked. "Castellano," Jinwoo said quietly. "He just posted bail for the lead officer who planted the drugs, and he's filed a lawsuit against you for defamation and false imprisonment." Ella felt the floor drop out from under her. "He can do that?" "He's trying to intimidate you into dropping the charges," Jinwoo said. His jaw tightened. "He wants you scared enough to recant your testimony before the FBI can build their case." Loretta's hands clenched into fists. "This man really thinks he's above the law." "He is above the law," Jinwoo said flatly. "That's the problem. He owns enough of the system that he can manipulate it to his advantage. The lawsuit is bogus. It'll get thrown out eventually, but it'll take months, and in those months he'll keep applying pressure, keep making your life difficult, keep hoping you'll break." He looked at Ella, his expression intense. "This is what I meant when I said taking down 3 corrupt cops wouldn't solve the larger problem. Castellano has resources, connections, lawyers who can tie up cases for years unless we take him down. Take completely. Destroy his entire network. He'll keep coming after you." "Then what do we do?" Ella asked, her voice shaking. "We fight back," Jinwoo said. "We give the FBI everything I have on Castellano. Wire transfers, recordings, connections to other criminal enterprises. We bury him in so much evidence that even his lawyers can't save him." "And what will that cost me?" Ella asked quietly. "What will it cost to work with you? To use your evidence?" Jinwoo's expression softened slightly. "It will cost you the comfortable illusion that justice works on its own. It will mean acknowledging that sometimes the only way to defeat monsters is to work with different monsters. It will mean crossing moral lines you never imagined crossing." He paused. "But it will also mean you get to live and teach and keep fighting for the students who need you. So you tell me, is that a cost you're willing to pay?" Ella looked at her mother, whose expression was unreadable. Then she looked at Jinwoo, this dangerous man who'd somehow become her only real protection. "Yes," she said finally. "I'll pay it." Loretta sighed heavily. "Then let's go to the FBI, and God help us all." 6 weeks later, Ella stood in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and broken promises. The witness stand felt like a spotlight. Every eye in the room focused on her as the prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Sandra Chen, prepared to question her. Richard Castellano sat at the defense table in a suit that probably cost more than Ella's annual salary. His expression was calm, confident, like this was just another business meeting. His lawyers flanked him, 3 of them, all expensive, all ready to tear her apart. Jinwoo sat in the back row, his face impassive. He'd spent the last 6 weeks working with the FBI, handing over evidence, making connections, building the kind of case that couldn't be dismissed or delayed. The wire transfers, the recordings, the connections to other criminal enterprises. Ella's mother sat beside him, her presence a steady anchor in the chaos. "Ms. Morrison," Chen said, her voice clear and professional, "can you tell the court what happened on the night of October 15th? Ella took a breath. "I was woken up at approximately 4 a.m. by the sound of my apartment door being broken down. 3 men in police uniforms entered my apartment claiming to have a search warrant." "Did they show you this warrant?" "No. When I asked to see it, the lead officer, Officer Michael Brennan, told me I would see it when they were done searching." "What happened next?" "They searched my apartment. One officer went through my closet. Another went through my dresser. And then—" Ella's voice cracked slightly. "Then I saw Officer Brennan's partner, Officer David Kowalski, pull a plastic bag of white powder from his own jacket pocket." "Object," One of Castellano's lawyers stood. The witness is speculating about where the contraband came from. Sustained, the judge said. Ms. Morrison, please stick to what you observed. Chen nodded. What did you observe, Ms. Morrison? I observed Officer Kowalski holding a plastic bag containing white powder, Ella said carefully. I observed him looking at Officer Brennan, who nodded. Then I observed Officer Kowalski claim he found the bag in my dresser drawer, even though I had just watched him pull it from his pocket. How can you be certain of what you saw? Because there was a security camera in my bedroom, Ella said. A camera I didn't know existed until that night. The footage shows exactly what happened. Chen pulled up the video on multiple screens around the courtroom. The jury leaned forward, watching as the scene played out exactly as Ella had described. Kowalski pulling the bag from his jacket. Brennan's nod. The fake discovery. The room was silent when it ended. Ms. Morrison, Chen continued, did you have any prior interaction with these officers before that night? No. Did you have any criminal record? No. Had you ever been arrested? No. So why do you believe these officers targeted you? Ella looked directly at Castellano. Because 3 weeks before that night, I stood up at a school board meeting and asked questions about financial contracts between our school district and a private security company. I asked why students were being arrested for minor infractions instead of getting counseling. I asked for transparency about where money was going. And who owns this security company? Richard Castellano, Ella said. The courtroom erupted. Castellano's lawyers objected. The judge called for order. But the damage was done. Chen pulled up more evidence. The wire transfers from Castellano's shell company to the officers' accounts. Recordings of conversations between Castellano and the officers discussing handling the teacher problem. Testimony from the 2 officers who'd confessed, detailing years of frame jobs and planted evidence, all paid for by Castellano. When it was the defense's turn, Castellano's lead lawyer, a man named Howard Cross, stood with theatrical precision. Ms. Morrison, he said smoothly, isn't it true that you have a relationship with a known criminal? Ella's heart stopped. I don't know what you... Eugene Wu, Cross said, your neighbor, the man who provided this so-called evidence. Isn't he the head of a Korean organized crime syndicate? Objection, Chen stood. Irrelevant to the charges against Mr. Castellano. It goes to credibility, Your Honor, Cross said. If Ms. Morrison is involved with criminals, how can we trust her testimony? The judge frowned. I'll allow it, but tread carefully, Counselor. Cross smiled. Ms. Morrison, answer the question. Is Yu Jinwoo a criminal? Ella looked at Jinwoo. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes. Permission, maybe, to tell the truth. I don't know the full extent of Mr. Yu's business activities, Ella said carefully. What I do know is that when corrupt police officers broke into my apartment to frame me, when the system I trusted failed me completely, Mr. Yu was the only person who stepped in to help. He provided evidence that has been verified by the FBI, evidence that shows exactly what your client did. That doesn't answer my question, Cross said. Then let me be clearer, Ella said, her voice stronger now. Whatever Mr. Yu is or isn't, he didn't pay police officers to plant drugs on innocent people. He didn't run a corruption network that destroyed lives for profit. He didn't use his position of power to silence people who ask questions. Your client did all of those things, and no amount of deflection is going to change that. The courtroom was silent. Cross tried a few more angles, but Ella held firm. When she finally stepped down from the witness stand 2 hours later, she felt like she'd run a marathon. The trial continued for 3 more days. More witnesses. More evidence. More recordings that made the jury's faces go pale with disgust. When the verdict came, Guilty on all counts, Ella felt tears stream down her face. Not from relief. From the terrible knowledge that this victory had come at such a cost. That she'd had to rely on a criminal to get justice. That the system she'd trusted had failed her so completely. Outside the courthouse, Jin Woo was waiting. He stood away from the crowd, his black coat a stark contrast against the white marble steps. "It's done," Ella said quietly. "Yes. Thank you for everything." Jin Woo studied her face. "You're not happy." "I'm grateful," Ella corrected. "But no, I'm not happy. I wanted to believe the system could work without—" She gestured vaguely at him. "Without needing someone like you to make it work." "The system is broken," Jin Woo said. "It has been for a long time. Sometimes it takes someone operating outside the system to prove that. That's a convenient philosophy for a criminal," Ella said, but there was no heat in her words. Jin Woo smiled slightly. "Yes, it is." But then his expression turned serious. He pulled out his phone, showed her a message. "Castellano's lawyers filed an appeal," he said quietly. "They're arguing that the surveillance footage was obtained illegally, that it violates privacy laws. They're trying to get it thrown out." Ella's stomach dropped. "Can they do that?" "They can try," Jin Woo said. "The FBI is confident the appeal will fail. The footage was legally obtained since you're listed as the building manager, but it will take months to resolve, and in those months, Castellano's people will keep trying to get to me," Ella finished. "Yes." Ella closed her eyes. "When does this end?" "When Castellano is in prison and his entire network is dismantled," Jin Woo said. "Which is why I need to tell you something. The FBI wants me to testify about Castellano's connections to other criminal organizations. They want me to provide evidence about his full operation, not just the corruption, but the money laundering, the racketeering, the violence." "What does that mean for you?" "It means I'll be exposed," Jin Woo said quietly. "My organization, my business activities, everything. The FBI is offering me immunity in exchange for my testimony, but once I'm in that courtroom, everyone will know exactly who and what I am." Ella looked at him. "You'd do that? Risk your entire operation to make sure Castellano goes down?" "I'd do that to make sure you're safe," Jin Woo corrected. "Everything else is secondary." Before Ella could respond, her mother appeared, her face grim. "Baby, we need to go," Loretta said. "There's a situation." "What situation?" "Castellano made bail," Loretta said. "And he's holding a press conference, right now." They found a TV in the courthouse lobby. Castellano stood at a podium, surrounded by his lawyers, his expression perfectly crafted for sympathy. "I have been the victim of a coordinated attack," he was saying. "False accusations made by individuals with ties to organized crime. I have dedicated my life to public service, and this is how I'm repaid, with lies and manufactured evidence." "That son of a—" Loretta started. "He's trying to spin the narrative," Jin Woo said quietly. "Make himself the victim, make you and me look like the criminals." On the screen, Castellano continued, "I call on the FBI to investigate you, Jin Woo, and his relationship with Ms. Morrison. I believe they have conspired to frame me using illegally obtained evidence. I will not rest until justice is served." The press conference ended. Ella stared at the blank screen, her mind reeling. "He's going to destroy us," she whispered. "No," Jin Woo said firmly. "He's going to try, but he's made a critical mistake." "What mistake?" "He's made this personal," Jin Woo said, his expression turning deadly. "He's attacked you publicly, questioned your integrity. That changes everything." "What are you going to do?" Jin Woo's smile was terrifying. "I'm going to show Castellano what happens when you threaten people I care about. I'm going to dismantle his operation piece by piece. Every connection, every asset, every person on his payroll. And then I'm going to testify in court and make sure he spends the rest of his life in prison. He looked at Ella. This ends now, one way or another. 3 months later, Ella came home from school to find Jinwoo in the hallway outside his apartment, arms full of grocery bags. He was wearing jeans and a simple black sweater, still expensive, but less intimidating than his usual uniform of darkness and minimalism. "Did you just go grocery shopping?" Ella asked, unable to hide her amusement. "I'm attempting to cook," Jinwoo said, sounding slightly defensive. "Your mother said a man my age should know how to feed himself." "You talked to my mother about cooking?" "She's been giving me recipes," Jinwoo admitted. "She seems to think I'm too thin." Ella laughed, a real laugh, the kind that came from the belly and chased away shadows. "Let me guess, she's trying to fatten you up with soul food?" "I've made her mac and cheese 3 times this week," Jinwoo said. "I think I'm getting better at it." "Are you?" "No." The last 3 months had been a whirlwind. Jinwoo's testimony had been devastating. He'd laid out Castellano's entire operation, the corruption network, the money laundering, the connections to organized crime. The FBI had used his information to arrest 17 more officers, 5 judges and 3 prosecutors. Castellano's empire had collapsed like a house of cards. The appeal had failed. The evidence stood. Castellano was looking at 20 years minimum. And Jinwoo had emerged from the testimony somehow changed. He'd stepped back from several of his criminal operations, handed control to his second-in-command, and started the slow process of trying to build a legitimate business empire. It wasn't redemption. He was too honest to pretend it was, but it was something. A start. "Want help?" Ella asked, gesturing to the groceries. Jinwoo's expression softened in a way that would have been invisible to anyone who didn't know him. But Ella had learned to read the subtle shifts in his face, the way his eyes warmed slightly, the almost smile that tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Yes," he said quietly. "I would." They cooked together in Jinwoo's minimalist kitchen, Ella teaching him the difference between sautéing and frying, Jinwoo listening with the same intense focus he probably brought to criminal negotiations. At some point, Ella's mother called, somehow knowing they were together, and stayed on speakerphone to provide commentary and corrections. It should have been absurd. A teacher, a former mafia boss, and a protective mother cooking dinner over the phone. But somehow it felt right, like pieces of different worlds learning to exist in the same space. "Jinwoo," Loretta's voice came through the speaker. "Did you add the paprika like I told you?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you stirred it clockwise?" "Why does the direction matter?" Jinwoo asked, sounding genuinely confused. "Because I said so," Loretta replied. "Now put Ella back on." Ella took the phone, grinning. "Yes, Mama?" "Is he treating you right?" Loretta asked quietly. "He's trying to make your mac and cheese recipe," Ella said. "I think that counts." "That boy's in love with you," Loretta said bluntly. "You know that, right?" Ella's heart did something complicated. "Mama?" "Don't mama me. I see how he looks at you, like you're the only good thing in his whole world, like protecting you is the only thing keeping him human." She paused. "You feel the same way about him?" Ella glanced at Jinwoo, who was carefully measuring spices with the same precision he probably used to plan criminal operations. "I don't know what I feel, Mama. He's complicated." "Everyone's complicated, baby. Question is whether they're worth the complexity." Later, after they'd eaten Jinwoo's slightly overcooked but earnest attempt at chicken, after her mother had finally hung up with threats about visiting next weekend to make sure that boy knows how to treat her daughter, Ella found herself standing at his window, looking out at the city lights. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asked. "Just walking away from everything?" "Every day," Jin-woo said, coming to stand beside her. "But walking away doesn't erase what you've done. It just means you carry it somewhere else." "So you stay?" "I stay," he confirmed. "But I'm learning that staying doesn't have to mean remaining the same person." Ella turned to look at him. In the soft light from the window, he looked almost peaceful. The sharp edges were still there, they always would be, but they were softened somehow, like he was learning to exist in daylight instead of shadows. "You've been protecting me for almost a year now," she said quietly. "Yes." "When does it stop being protection and start being something else?" Jin-woo was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know, but I'd like to find out, if you're willing." Ella thought about the night her door had splintered. The terror, the helplessness. The moment Jin-woo had appeared in the doorway and changed everything. She thought about how being protected and being loved might actually be the same thing when the protection came without demands, without conditions, without expectations of anything in return. She thought about how this dangerous man had stepped into the light for her, had risked his entire empire to make sure she was safe, had stood beside her in a courtroom and let the world see exactly who he was. "I'm willing," she said softly. Jin-woo's hand found hers in the darkness, careful, gentle, asking rather than taking. "I'm not a good man," he said quietly. "I've done terrible things, hurt people, made choices I can't undo. I can try to be better, but I'll never be the kind of person who deserves someone like you." "Maybe not," Ella agreed, "but you're the person who saved me when no one else would. You're the person who stood up to corruption when the system failed. You're the person who's trying to change, even though it would be easier not to." She squeezed his hand. "That has to count for something." Jin-woo's other hand came up to cup her face, his touch impossibly gentle for someone with so much violence in his past. "It counts for everything," he whispered. When he kissed her, it felt like a promise. Not that he'd be perfect, not that the world would suddenly make sense, but that he'd keep trying, keep fighting, keep protecting the good things in a world full of darkness. Outside, the city continued its endless dance of light and shadow, good and evil, systems and the people who existed in the spaces between. And in apartment 6A, a teacher and a reformed criminal stood together in the window, learning how to build something new from the wreckage of who they'd been before. It wasn't a fairy tale, it wasn't simple, but it was real. 6 months after that, Ella walked into her classroom to find Jin-woo standing awkwardly near the door, holding a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. "What are you doing here?" she asked, surprised. He never came to her school. Too many questions, too many complications. "Your mother said you needed new art supplies for your classroom," Jin-woo said, holding out the package. "I wasn't sure what kind, so I asked the owner of the art store. He seemed very enthusiastic about recommendations." Ella opened the package to find premium markers, sketch pads, and paint sets, probably $300 worth of supplies. "Jin-woo," she said, "this is too much." "Your students deserve good materials," he said simply. "And you deserve to give them those. Materials without worrying about the cost." One of her students, Marcus, a 16-year-old with trust issues and a talent for drawing, peered around the doorway. "Ms. Morrison, who's this?" "A friend," Ella said. Marcus studied Jin-woo with the kind of street-smart assessment that kids in rough neighborhoods developed early. "You're that guy from the trial, the one who took down Castellano. Jin Woo's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe, or concern. You followed the trial? Everyone followed the trial, Marcus said. Castellano's security company was harassing my mom's store, making her pay protection money. After you testified, they all disappeared. My mum says you're a hero. Jin Woo looked profoundly uncomfortable. I'm not a hero. Maybe not, Marcus said. But you did something when everyone else was too scared. That's got to count. After Marcus left, Ella found herself smiling. See? You're a hero now. I'm a criminal who happened to do one good thing, Jin Woo said. Don't romanticize it. I'm not romanticizing, Ella said. She moved closer, straightening his collar even though it didn't need straightening. I'm just noticing that you keep doing good things, buying supplies for my classroom, helping my mother fix her car, donating to the community center. Your mother's car was a safety hazard, Jin Woo muttered. And the community center? They needed a new roof. And the scholarship fund you set up for students from low-income families? Jin Woo was quiet. I have money. It should go somewhere useful. Ella kissed his cheek. You're a good man, Jin Woo, even if you don't believe it yet. That evening, they walked through the neighborhood together. It was something they'd started doing, just walking, no destination. Jin Woo slowly learning how to exist in normal life, how to be recognized not as a threat, but as a person. They passed the corner store where Mrs. Kim worked. She waved enthusiastically. Mr. Yu, thank you for helping with my daughter's college application, Jin Woo waved back, looking embarrassed. They passed the community center where teenagers played basketball. Several of them called out greetings. They passed Mama Loretta's church, where a sign announced an upcoming fundraiser for school supplies. You're becoming part of the community, Ella said quietly. It's strange, Jin Woo admitted, spending 15 years trying to stay invisible, and now people know my face, know my name, want to talk to me. Is it good strange or bad strange? I'm not sure yet, Jin Woo said. Then, after a pause, but I think I'm starting to like it. They ended up at Ella's apartment. The door had been fixed, new locks installed, the space slowly feeling like hers again. She'd moved back in a month ago, though she still spent most nights in Jin Woo's apartment. Stay for dinner? She asked. I should go, Jin Woo said. I have a meeting with my accountant about converting some of my assets into legitimate businesses. Look at you, Ella teased, going legit. Trying to go legit, Jin Woo corrected. It's harder than I expected. Legitimate businesses have so many rules. That's kind of the point. Jin Woo smiled, a real smile, not the deadly soft one he used to wear like armor. I know, I'm learning. He started to leave, then paused at the door. Ella? Yes. I love you, he said quietly. I know I'm not supposed to. I know it complicates everything, but I do. Ella's heart did that complicated thing again. I love you too, she said. Complicated and all. 1 year after the trial, Ella stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at a small velvet box that had appeared on her dresser that morning. Inside was a simple ring, elegant, understated, exactly her style. There was a note. If you'll have me. If you think a reformed criminal can deserve a second chance at being someone worthy of you. Her hands shook as she picked up the ring. C found Jin Woo in his apartment, sitting at his desk, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Yes, she said. He looked up, hope and fear warring on his face. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you, Ella said. Yes, I think you deserve a second chance. Yes, I believe being protected and being loved are the same thing when they come from you. Jinwoo stood so fast he nearly knocked over his chair. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms like she might disappear if he let go. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve this," he whispered against her hair. "Trying to deserve you." "You already do," Ella said. "You just need to believe it." They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at Mama Loretta's church. The guest list was strange. Teachers and students, reformed criminals trying to go straight, FBI agents who'd worked the Castellano case, community members who'd benefited from Jinwoo's quiet generosity. Castellano was in prison, his appeal denied, his empire destroyed. The 3 corrupt officers were serving 15-year sentences. The city's corruption network was still being dismantled, but it was happening, slowly, piece by piece. And in a small apartment building in a neighborhood that was learning to trust again, a teacher and a reformed mafia boss were learning how to build a life together, how to grocery shop and cook dinner and argue about whose turn it was to do laundry. It wasn't perfect. Jinwoo still woke up with nightmares sometimes. Ella still flinched when she heard loud noises. They both carried scars that would never fully heal, but they carried them together. And sometimes, Ella thought as she watched her husband carefully measure ingredients for Mama Loretta's mac and cheese recipe, sometimes that was enough. Sometimes love meant finding someone who saw all your broken pieces and chose to stay anyway. Who protected you, not because you were weak, but because you were worth protecting. Who learned to live in the light even though they'd spent years in shadow. Outside their window, the city hummed with life, messy, complicated, beautiful life. And inside, a teacher and her unlikely protector were learning that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about choosing every single day to be better than who you were before. It was about believing that love could exist in the spaces between right and wrong, light and shadow, justice and mercy. It was about proving that even people who'd lost their way could find it again with the right person standing beside them. And in the end, that was worth everything. If you enjoy the story, subscribe for more stories and comment where you're watching from. I would love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going.